Hello, everybody. Megan, are you out there? Can you hear us?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you
morning.
guys for joining us. Megan, question for you. Can you see Dana and I both in that screen?
I can.
Okay, perfect. So I'll make sure everybody else can see it. Thank you guys for joining us today for our insider call here at Keller Williams Brevard and Keller Williams Space Coast. So welcome, everybody. It's super exciting today. We are not going to do what we normally do because Rick's not here, so I get to be in charge of the show. And so we're not doing market stats today. What we are going to do, though, is we have a special guest in the house, and we are going to talk to her. So we have Dana Blickley, the Brevard County Property Appraiser. So Dana, welcome to our show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. This is my first time meeting you, and she is an excellent speaker. So you guys, I'm super excited about this. Okay, so you are ready to get started?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go. So I get this a lot. What does the Brevard County Property Appraiser actually do?
That is a great question. So it's summed up in 3 words, but I'm
Okay.
going to be a little bit more specific. So we discover, list, and value all property to be appraised and taxed, for taxing
Mhm.
purposes. So the discover part would be taking all recorded instruments from the clerk of court and describing property. That could be a subdivision, that could be a meets and bounds parcel, that could be a condominium,
Mhm.
or just vacant land. So as those properties become a parcel,
Mhm.
we have to do the administrative process to discover that and list it appropriately. So it has to have a legal description. We assign it a parcel identification number, and it also gets a tax account
Yeah.
number. There's probably no one on this that's watching this that doesn't know what those 7 numbers are, because it makes the one-to-one relationship a lot easier to identify. And then, of course, we value property based on market activity.
Nice. I hope that explains it for everybody, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of people don't quite know what you do. So thank you. That was super helpful. I'm going to pivot for just a second. How long have you been doing this?
Oh, longer than I'd like to admit.
Okay, we're
right?
not going to say that. She's well versed in this job.
No, that is quite all right. So July 1st would be 40 years.
Okay, so you started as an infant. Okay, great.
Yes, I started when I was 12. That's the math we're going to go
Okay,
with.
I like it.
Actually, I started when I was 18 years of age. I was in college, and I took what I thought was going to be a summer job for the summer, and that turned into 20 years.
I love it.
And then I left the profession for a few years and came back once my kids were in college, and applied for this job parcel by parcel.
I love it. That's that's so awesome. Okay, so let's go back to that. I just had to know how long you've been doing this, because
Okay.
everyone else here in my office seems to know who you are. So since I'm newer to Brevard County, I needed to know all that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
What does your office not do that people often mistakenly think falls under the property appraiser office?
Sure. 2 things. The first one is we do not set tax rates. So the property appraiser does not have a hand in determining what a tax rate is going to be. That is
Mhm.
reserved for taxing authorities. Those would be folks like county commissioners, city council folks, sometimes Tallahassee, depending upon like school taxes that aren't done at the local level. And then the other thing that we don't do is collect money. So a lot of folks confuse the property appraiser with the tax collector. And a lot of folks will say, oh, I write you a check every year. And I say, no, you write my great friend Lisa Cullen a check every year, but she appreciates it very much. So those are the 2 biggest misconceptions.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys get blamed for a lot of things that don't even fall under you. So yeah. All right. So can you explain the difference between the value your offices place on a property as a realtor CMA, and then also like a lender appraisal? Because I often talk to agents in the office, and sometimes they're just all on different pages.
Sure.
So how does that work? How can you help us as agents?
Sure, that gets very confusing. So this is Florida specific, because different states around the country have different levels of assessment. So the answer I'm going to give you is Florida specific, although it would be for all 67 counties.
Okay.
So the law determines in Florida that we are 100% market value state, meaning that there is no difference between the selling price of a property, a CMA on a property, or the value that the property appraiser, value conclusion that the property appraiser comes up with. The difference is this. The first is that we as property appraisers must exclude anything not related to the bricks and the mortar and the land of the sale.
Okay.
So for instance, those are things like title fees, transaction fees,
Mhm.
attorney fees, closing fees, those types of things. So we have to extract those, what's called cost of sale. And for those of you that have legal minds, you can
Mhm.
find that in Florida statute 193.011, subparen 1 through 8, that talks about the things that property appraisers must consider in arriving at value, and also those costs that they must remove from the selling prices. So that's the difference. The other difference is that anything that happens after January 1 for a
Mhm.
property appraiser is not considered until the following year. So if you think about it, that means that my values are always going to be pretty much, well, a year behind, because I'm going to be using all of the market activity in 2025 to determine what the 2026 values are going to be, because that legal assessment date is January 1st. So those are the only differences. Obviously, sometimes you will see major differences because I can't hypothesize and I can't do forecasting. And many times I have to wait until I have enough market activity to change rates that we use to
Gotcha.
appraise property.
Good. That's good. All right. Let's talk about the big topic out there. The 2026 Florida Property Tax Amendment number 3. Before I ask you any questions, I'm super excited to announce to you guys that by the end of this call, or the end of the day, or maybe by the end of the week, you guys will have access to the FAQs for this. And so I've got a copy of it right here that Dana has, and she's going to share some stuff with us on that, but that will be posted for all of you guys. So look for that later today. By the end of the week, it'll be there.
I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I'm hoping.
Yeah. Don't call her if it's not, though, guys. It'll be there. Don't bother her. So let's talk a little bit about that, because there are a lot of opinions and social media posts, and they're eliminating the property taxes on homestead properties. So can you separate fact from speculation for us, and like what's actually happening?
Well, yes, to some extent. So let's just talk about the meats of what happens when we have a Florida constitutional amendment. So whenever we're going to make changes to our Constitution with any type of amendment, that takes 60% of folks that vote for that amendment. So that's a big number. 50%, 50 plus 1, you can get there pretty often, particularly with property tax legislation, but 60% is a big number. So I'm here to tell you that it's a 50-50. Will 60% of the folks see value in the changes that are being proposed from this amendment? So of course, we'll all just have to wait until November to see how that is, because we're going to be one county,
Right.
of 67 that's going to weigh in on this amendment. And I don't mean to be reading to anybody, but it is a pretty cumbersome property tax amendment. So basically, there's 3 things that this amendment would do for Florida property owners, and they're not all the same class of property owners, meaning property type. So the first thing that this amendment would do is increase homestead exemption for qualifying properties. And that has a graduated number based on whether or not you are a Florida resident and property owner as of January 1, 2027, what those amounts will be for the first year versus the second year, and what those amounts would be for new Florida homeowners that are filing for homestead that haven't been Florida residents previous. So those are the main provisions of the homesteaded portion. Then it would also reduce the assessment limitation for non-homesteaded property. As you guys know now, that assessment cap is 10%. That would reduce that 10% for non-homesteaded or non-residential property or all other types of property to 5%. Okay. So there would be an effect there as well. So voters will weigh in on this November the 3rd, 2026. And if it were to pass, this would be effective January 1, 2027.
Okay, that's good to know. So tell me about, because what people are hearing is no property taxes on homesteads, and there's a lot of misunderstanding and oversimplifying. So it's kind of a touchy subject, I feel like, and a lot of misinformation out there. So as agents and realtors out there, how do we help you educate the public, besides just giving the FAQ, but also not being the know all for that, because I also don't want to take that on as a responsibility that I said that. So what
Sure.
can we be doing?
Sure. Well, let's talk about a little bit of the history
Okay.
of, kind of how this amendment came to be and what the schools of thought were. And again, this is not I'm not pro the amendment or against the amendment, but
Yeah.
but there's kind of two schools of thought, if you will, from the inception of this. One is that, once you purchase your home and you pay for your home and you pay your mortgage off and you own your home, why should you have to pay the government again for a home that you've already paid for? That was one school of thought. The other school of thought is that it's not necessarily your home that you're paying for again, but it's all of those services that we either demand or that we vote for ourselves or that we expect out of our communities. So, what property owners expect maybe in the Viera Sundtry area may be very different than the rural parts of our county, say in the north or the south end of the county. So that's kind of the two different schools of thought on this. The other is that, property taxes in the state of Florida have been increasing as values have been increasing and as tax rates have been increasing. So this referendum would place some additional protections by way of increasing homestead exemption for homesteaded properties. When this was first talked about, you heard elimination of property taxes altogether.
Yeah, that's what
Right.
everybody wanted to hear.
Right. And that sounds great.
Mhm.
But the response to that were a lot of adults in the room that said, wait, that sounds great, but if that were to happen, how would we fund certain things?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And those probably at the top of the list for most property owners would be public safety, which includes fire rescue. If we grab our chest and we feel a pain and we call 911, we certainly want somebody to show up. I think everybody can agree to that. Same with law enforcement.
Yeah.
School taxes, as we know, property taxes are in many cases almost half of what property owners pay. And there was a preservation of that to say, nope, we will eliminate that from this proposed amendment from its inception. Because when the bill was first filed, it did not hold those types of levies harmless. Now it does hold schools harmless, although it doesn't hold public safety harmless.
I don't know about you guys, but public safety is important to me. So, so that actually makes perfect sense, because I think people just automatically want something for free, if you will. Like they just want to, like life is hard right now. Everything costs more. Gas costs more. Food costs
Sure.
more. So they want a little more money back in their pocket. So, but there are things to consider. You have to consider public safety. Is that important to you? Yeah, and it should be. But I don't decide that for people. They get to decide. But that's just
Yep.
my 2 cents, because I can say my opinion. You can't, but I can. So yeah, that's interesting. So I like that. Let's see. So what should homeowners and realtors be watching over? Like in the next 6 to 12 months, what should we kind of be, or just educating us? Maybe that's more what we need, is just
Yeah.
education.
For now, what I would recommend for anybody in the real estate industry is that we kind of have to be patient, right? We've got to see what the voters decide to do with this. And in the meantime, really the best thing that we can do is just be purveyors of factual information. So pretty much, almost every property appraiser will probably have some FAQs out there that will give you kind of the bone structure of this referendum and actually how it would affect first-time homesteaders, existing homesteaders, new Florida residents after January 1, fully exempt property owners, because if you're fully exempt and you pay no ad valorem taxes, it's really not a benefit or a detriment to you. It's kind of a
Moot point,
a-
right?
a
Yeah.
moot point. And then, of course, for non-homesteaded and commercial property owners, there is the provision that would take that assessment cap that can increase now 10% from the previous year down to 5%. So that's what I would recommend right now. Everybody should have an opinion on this referendum. I think it is very serious anytime
It
we are
is.
talking about changing our Constitution. I can tell you I have a strong opinion about that. That everybody, when they go in to vote on a change in their Constitution, that they glean as much information as possible. And I know it can be difficult because a
Yeah.
lot of these amendments are not meant for the layman to really understand. And that's really what we're trying to do with the FAQs, is really break it down for the layman and each property owner so they can read that, understand how it would affect them, and then go to other sources, counties and cities, to get additional information.
I think, and having this posted will be that, to me, if I'm guiding anyone in my office, I'm going to tell them, listen, go get this,
Yeah.
Download a copy of it, send it to everyone that you know, because you're not saying your opinion. You're giving facts. You're just
Yes.
presenting the facts, and the fact that you guys are laying it down so it makes sense. Because you're right, because we get so many things and you're reading all this stuff and like, well, what does that actually mean? So breaking it down to us understanding. And so, yeah, I love that packet, you guys. So definitely look for that. If you guys have any questions, by the way, you can just type it in the chat there. My phone was blown up yesterday with questions, so don't be afraid to ask today. But yeah, so before we move on, anything else that we should know out of that packet that stands out to you that's important for us to know?
Just know that probably one of the biggest qualifiers for this is whether or not you are a new Florida resident after January 1 of 2027. So virtually, if you purchase a property or you own a property and you file for a homestead and you'll qualify, as of January 1, 2027, you'll be eligible for the larger amounts of the exemption. So the first year would be $150. The second year would be $250 as the referendum reads today. If that is not the case, let's say you come here after January 1, 2027, and of course, all of this would be based on this passing.
Yeah.
Then you would have a graduated amount. You would have a $50,000 homestead exemption until you reached a 5 year, until you reach the 250, and it would be $50,000 a year. A portion of that would be adjusted annually by CPI until you reach the full 250.
Yeah. Good. And I think, again, this is the most important thing we could have in our hands right now to educate ourselves for the next 6 to 12 months, or just even now until November.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
is getting your hands on something that actually makes sense, because social media isn't the answer always for information. So
Sure.
yeah, almost never, right? Yeah, exactly. But on social media, you could go on there and say, hey, go to this website, get these FAQs if you want to know more about it.
Right.
Or if you want to know more about it, reach out to me, right? It's a good touch. Reach out to me and I'll send you that. So yeah, very cool. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about portability, because I think this is a benefit that, like, I did for years. I've been doing this for 13 years. And I think I probably didn't realize anything about portability until I was like 5 years into my real estate career, which is a shame. I hate to admit, but I am admitting it. So it's one of the most underused, I think, and misunderstood benefits of Florida homestead. So can you explain in simple terms, what is portability?
Sure. Portability simply means that you're taking your homestead benefits from one Florida property to another. So back some years ago, when we changed our constitution to allow some assessment protections and limitations for homesteaded properties, what we found is that folks felt like that they had a ball and chain to their property. They didn't want to sell that property or give up their homestead exemption on that property because the difference between their market and their assessed was so great as a result of the way the Florida property tax system works. So in Florida, once you claim a Florida property as your homestead exemption, your assessed value is capped at 3% or the CPI, whichever is less. And you retain that, each year that you own your property, so long as you don't sell it or change your title in a way that would affect that. Well, you can imagine through time when you have double-digit growth, like we've experienced, not this cycle, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but the 11 cycles prior to 2026, a lot of those years were double-digit growth in terms of the changes from one year to the next on our market values. So we were seeing that differential grow. What portability did is allow us to take that savings with you to a new property so you don't lose that additional protection. Has some caveats with it. You have some time restraint, so you can only go 2 years without having a homestead exemption. So if you read the letter of the law, the way the attorneys wrote it, it says 3 years. No offense to all my officers of the court, but you never really had 3 total years. You could only go without homestead exemption to 2 years. You had to have your ownership in place and ready to file for that third year. So you can only go 2 years without it. You have to own and be ready to file January 1 of that third year. The second caveat to that is there is a cap. So right now, as the law exists, you can only take 500,000 with you.
Okay.
So if you live, say, on a beachside
Mhm.
property, you might have $750,000 of differential. You can only take 500 with you. The good news is that even though, yes, a lot of people don't understand it, and I'm going to speak just for Brevard, although a lot of my peers would share the same protocol. When you come to file for homestead exemption in Brevard County, whether you are filing in person, online, or by mail, we're going to take you through a series of questions. One is your eligibility for the exemption, but the other is to determine if you have portability benefits that would be in play. Maybe you've never heard of it or you don't realize it exists. Well, through those series of questions, we're going to ask you, did you have property exemptions on any other property? And we're going to go grab that and actually fill out that extra portability application. So yes, it's a separate application, but in Brevard, it's going to feel seamless to you because once you file for homestead, our staff is going to take you through that process.
So when I'm going to fill it out, because I actually live in St. Lucie County right now, and we're moving up to, hopefully, to Brevard.
Yay.
Yep. So how does that work county to county then?
Well, when you come
Fill that out?
you come to file for a homestead exemption, and I'm going to take this piece of paper that's being handed to me because we actually have a brochure on exactly how portability works.
Perfect.
This is on the website as well, so you
Okay.
can download this in electronic form, or Amanda with our office will get you these.
Yep.
Kind of look like Monopoly cards,
I like
and
it.
you can hand those to your potential clients or your existing clients. So the way that this works is the same in any other county. So you can port benefits from any other Florida property that you've previously had homestead on any new Florida property. So you can come from any of the other 66 counties and come to Brevard and find your way here. And those portability benefits would work the same as if you were going from one Brevard property to another.
Perfect. That was your subtle invitation to move to Brevard County. I like it.
It
I'm
absolutely
going with
was.
it. So I think everyone should as well. I love it. And so it's not automatic. You actually have to go and apply and do the things.
You do have to apply, but in Brevard County, when you file for a homestead exemption, we're automatically going to take you through the portability application process anytime you file.
Gotcha. So automatically do that. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Anything else that we should know on portability?
No, just know that it does have a time limit, and that your portability benefits at 100% are always based on you going from a lower price property to a higher price property. And we've got some math examples on the back. There are portability benefits, even if you're downsizing, you just don't bring all of it with you. You get
Gotcha.
a portion of it.
That's a good point. Because then you can't bring more than it's actually on the property you're getting, right? So perfect. Yeah. I love this because I wrote down to make sure I asked you about FAQs about it, but this is also posted on your website. So you can go and look at that information. Not bad for us to have in hand though, to hand out to our clients when we're giving a, buyer. Yeah. Okay. There you go. A little goodie bag. I'm being shown a little goodie bag. You guys don't get to see this amazing person over here off screen. And she's handing us goodies and I like it. But yeah, this is part of that goodie bag to sellers that they can give around. So.
And we are happy to provide, your offices, title companies. Amanda spends a lot of time out there in the community and outreach with folks that do a lot of closings and provide them with hard copies, and also just making sure that they know that information is available on our website.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. All right, let's switch gears. I've got 2 pages. Don't freak out. It's really not that many questions. I could be here all day asking you questions, but you probably have other things to do than spend the whole day with us. So common homestead mistakes. What do you think are the most common misunderstandings that you hear about regarding homestead exemption?
Number one, that your homestead exemption follows you. So if you sell a property, particularly in the same city or same taxing jurisdiction. So, I owned a property in Rockledge and I sold it and I bought a new house. It's only 2 streets over. Why do I have to refile? It's because those benefits stay with the property. You qualify the property with your with your residency documents, but that exemption stays with the property. So it does not follow you The property appraiser cannot legally give you homestead exemption without an application. That's a limitation that I have in the law. So you have to make sure anytime you are making any changes to the title of your property, or if you're selling a property or just buying a new property and going to file for homestead exemption on that property, that you have to make a new application. And then the second one would be making changes to your title that affect your exemption or your benefits. And the amazing person that's sitting in the goodie bag is going to hand me another brochure. Nope, no, she's not. She's going, nope, I didn't bring those. We do have another one. It's a different color, and it talks about title changes and what type of title changes require a new application and what ones do not, what types of changes affect your benefits and what do not. So those are the two biggest mistakes that property owners make in their pursuit for the greatest amount of benefits. The other one is that you need to be aware there's more than just homestead exemption. There are a myriad of different types of exemptions for civilian disability, military disability. There's a myriad of disability exemptions for veterans. For folks that are blind. And so widowers,
yeah.
there's those exemptions as well. So folks just need to understand that they need to be aware of all of those exemptions that are granted to us in the great state of Florida. And it is our job to make sure you know about them. And, we try to qualify you for as many exemptions as possible.
Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, I think there's a lot of exemptions that people really don't have any clue about, to your point.
Yes.
Yeah,
So Dora, we do have a question
Sure.
from a viewer.
go for it.
So she is asking, does having her home in a trust affect the ability to do a homestead exemption?
It does not. It absolutely does not affect your ability to have homestead exemption. There's a couple of important points. The first one is whenever you do put a property into trust, and the most common transaction we see is, husband and wife will own a property and then they'll put their property into a trust and they don't refile their homestead exemption. So the first thing is you need to refile your exemption once you make that title change, because you now no longer own the property as husband and wife. You now own it probably as a trustee of the trust. So now the property belongs to the trust. The other important thing is that the trust have possessory verbiage in it. Most of our estate planning attorneys in Brevard do a great job to make sure that that information is there. Basically says the trust owns the property, but I have the right to file for homestead exemption and claim this property as my homestead. So the trust does not affect your ability to have homestead.
Great.
That's a
thank
great
you.
question. I'm going to ask, because personally, I didn't realize, because we just put ours into a trust. And so I don't know that. I don't remember doing that. So now I need to go do that. So thank you, whoever asked that question. All right. What do you wish every realtor would tell a buyer at closing about homestead? What can we tell them?
What I wish every realtor or anybody closing on a real estate transaction in Florida conveys to their new owner is that their property tax bill likely will not look like the property tax bill from the previous owner.
Yep.
That if you would promise to do that for me, I would love you as a people of always. Obviously, that is a big misunderstanding, particularly for new Florida property owners that do not understand how the Florida property tax system works here. And, they may be looking at a property that has had homestead for 20 years and has had that 3% or CPI protection. And remember, some years CPI was 1.3 or 1.7. So if that is a big ask, and I would appreciate that. There's actually some legislation that is going to force some this additional disclosures that's going to provide new property owners with that information. But it's just a disclosure that says, hey, the property taxes may not look the same, and there'll be an estimating calculator on all property appraiser websites. But we still can't emphasize the need for folks to understand that in Florida, you can't simply look at the last year's tax bill and think that that's what yours is going to look like if you purchase the property.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I think that's so important. Normally we are 30 minutes long on this, you guys. I'm going to purposely go over just a little bit because I do have some more questions I want to answer with Dana. And also, if you guys have questions, again, feel free to drop it in the chat if she didn't cover something yet. Real quick on the homestead property exemption, what happens when someone rents out their homesteaded property? Because, you know, we have a lot of rental properties.
Oh, that can
This must be a troubled source here.
that can be a long topic, but I'm
Mhm.
going to cover the meat very quickly for you. The law says that anybody other than an active military member,
Mhm.
an active military member can own a property, have homestead exemption, and rent their property out. Is the only class of property owner that can do that. And there are some requirements with that, like their active orders have to be kept on file with us at all times for that. Other than those folks that are in that class, the rest of us cannot rent out our homestead property more than 30 days in 2 consecutive years. Okay.
Okay.
However, there's also a caveat to that. If that period of time happens to be across a tax year, so you rent your property out from December 25th to January 2nd, you now given up your homestead exemption because you didn't own and occupy as of January 1. Okay.
Mm.
So renting a property that has homestead exemption is very, very tricky. Not going to tell you that you can't do it. I'm a property rights girl, but you better understand the timelines and the limitations if you're going to do that.
Yeah. And I guess if they have any questions, to reach out to your office.
If
That's the best thing, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So speaking about military and veteran, because we have such a high population of that here in Brevard
We
County,
do.
what are property tax exemptions or discounts that they most commonly miss?
So commonly miss maybe the fact that we have an exemption at all. Some states do have them. Some states do not have them. It's not so much that a lot of our veterans miss them. A lot of our veterans don't file for them because they feel that, particularly if they were combat, they came back. Maybe some of their comrades did not, and they just don't feel like that they should partake in that exemption. And I disagree. Not that their opinions are wrong, but we certainly want to make sure, I'm losing my headset here. We want to make sure that our veterans who have served this country so honorably receive any and all benefits afforded to them through our property tax system. So first and foremost is education for our veterans to know. And I can tell you that Amanda spends a great deal of time. We have almost 80,000 veterans in Brevard County.
Wow.
More per capita than any other county in the nation, except for one. That's in Texas, and they cheat because they have 4 military bases. So we do. I'm going to brag on this part of our office, and I'm going to brag on the people that work in the property appraiser's office. We do a very good job of community outreach when it comes to our veterans. So that's the first thing. The other thing is contacting us whenever they have a change in their benefits. So, you know, if you go from being 70% to 70%, but total and permanent, that changes a $5,000 exemption to no property taxes, no ad valorem taxes. So the other thing would be making sure that you're communicating with us whenever you have a change in your benefits.
That's good to know. I actually have a friend who's got probably a change in benefits. So
Yeah.
I bet I don't know that he knows that. So I will let him know.
So-
Question, Megan.
Yep. So we have actually a couple questions
Go for it.
in the box, and I know we're getting low on time. So
It's okay.
first question is, what is the best way to explain to a homeowner the difference between assessed value and the actual appraised value or purchase price?
So I actually went over that a little bit ago. It was like the second question, but that actual question is an FAQ that is on our website. So you can go right to that FAQ and print it out, and it will tell you the difference between market value, assessed value, and taxable value.
Perfect. And then, and I've seen this before when I'm doing a listing, but she asks, what would you recommend we do if the property isn't on Brevard County Property Appraiser for privacy reasons? What's the best course of action to get the info if they need to?
You need to call our office so we can determine if you are an individual that can legally have access to protected confidential properties. And if sometimes that you are, but we have to get an authorization from you. So the best thing to do in those cases is to contact one of our offices. By
Perfect.
phone. Yeah, by phone.
Perfect. And then I know this question here was on the list that Dora had, so I'm going to go ahead and ask it is, what online tools does your office wish more realtors and homeowners knew about?
Probably the search engine is pretty powerful. Most folks, when they're doing property searches, will go to, the home page, they'll click on search for property, and the first 5 or 6 search criteria will come up. You can actually expand that section. There's a little thing where you can expand it, and you can put in many more fields or criteria for your search. So instead of looking for, say, single family residences in a certain area, you can look for single family residences in this subdivision that have a pool and have a square footage of at least 2,500 square feet. So that I know can be very, very helpful for you and for your clients, so they can kind of do some research themselves.
Great. Thank you.
That was a great question. That was going to be my next question on the tools and what we're missing out. So let's wrap it up real quick. I want to ask, I'm going to ask 2 last questions, but one, if every realtor in Brevard remembered only 3 things from today's conversation, what would you want it to be?
Please make sure you let your new buyers know their tax bill may look very differently than the tax bill on the same property a year ago. Number 2 would be, get yourselves educated on what is contained in the referendum. You're not expected to be the experts, but providing folks with information is the best that all of us can do right now. Try to make sure you're getting your information from sources that might be less opining, and it's okay. It's okay to have a very strong opinion on it. But what you want to do when you're being a purveyor of information is give factual information and not take ownership of what may or may not happen to a particular property. And then the third thing I would say is be very careful telling someone how this referendum is going to affect them individually. Because the first thing is you don't know what the reaction of the taxing authorities are going to be with tax rates. You don't know exactly what this potential client may or may not qualify for. If you have rented a property for the past 5 years, but you've been a Florida resident and you purchase your property prior to January 1 of 2027, you're going to apply, qualify for the larger amount. A lot of folks don't understand this. Many in our industry read this and think that you have to have had homestead for 5 years. That is not what this referendum says. This referendum says you have to have been a Florida resident for that period of time, or have owned and had a homestead exemption as of January 1, 2027. So those would probably be the top 3 right now. If we were talking about a different subject at a different time, I probably wouldn't include those types of things. But with this referendum, I think that that's the most timely information we can provide.
Perfect. Last question to you. Anything else you want us to know?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having venues like this. This is the best way for us as an agency to reach you. You are the best purveyors of our information. I'm a taxpayer. This costs taxpayers $0 other than my time to come and provide you with this information. And you guys do a heroic effort of propagating that out. And we are ever thankful for that and the partnership.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to come today,
Thank you
and Amanda both. We appreciate you. And yeah, if we have any questions, call the property appraiser office and they can answer those questions. Go on their website, look for that FAQs. You heard it first here. So thank you guys for joining us today on the Insider Call.
Thank you.
Bye.